Good morning, everyone. In the last session, we discussed about what is start class in the Spring Boot and how that start class is going to execute in the Spring Boot. Whenever we create a boot application, by default, we are getting one Java class. That Java class will contain a main method. Inside the main method, we are calling run method, and it is having one annotation called @Spring Boot application. So this Java class is called start class in the Spring Boot, and this start class is entry point for boot application execution. So inside this start class, we are having @boot application annotation. That boot application annotation is equal to three annotations. One is boot configuration. Second one is enable auto configuration. Third one is component scan. Configuration annotation represents that our Java class is a configuration class. It is a replacement for XML file in the Spring. Next one, we have a annotation called @enable auto configuration. So auto configuration means whatever the configuration required for the application, that will be provided by the Spring Boot. Instead of we are writing the configuration, Boot will provide the configuration required for the application. And the next one, component scanning is available. What is the meaning of component scanning? It is the process of identifying what are the Spring Bean classes available in our application. So you no need to create any XML. You no need to tell where the Bean class is available. By default, Boot will scan the packages available in the application to identify which is a Spring Bean. But we need to understand how that component scanning working in the Spring Boot. Component scanning will work based on the base package name. The package which contains our start class is called as a base package. First, it is going to scan the base package. It will identify any Spring Bean available or not. If the Spring Bean is available, IOC will load that and will create the object depends on the bean scope. If the bean scope is a singleton, object will be created by default. If the bean scope is a prototype, when you call getBean method, then only object will be created. And the next one, after the base package scanning is completed, then it will scan sub packages of the base package. What is the sub package of the base package? The package which is starting with the base package name is called as sub package of the base package. In .Ashoka, it is a base package. This package will be scanned. For these two classes, bean objects will be created. In .Ashoka.service. Yes, service package also starting with the base package will participate in the component scanning. Security will participate in the component scanning. Util will participate in the component scanning. What about com.tcs? This will not participate in the component scanning because it is not part of the base package. Now, can we configure more than one base package in the application? Can we configure more than one base package in the application? Yes, we can configure more than one base package by using component scan annotation. Then after, we discussed about what is a bean annotation. So can you tell me what is bean annotation? Can you tell me what is bean annotation? So it is used to customize bean object creation. It is used to customize bean object creation. So if you go for @component, by default, IOC container will create the object for the bean. I don't want IOC container to create the bean object. I want to create the bean object for my class. Then we can go for @bean annotation. So in the real time, when you are working with, when we are working with the project development, security configuration will be available. So IOC don't know what kind of security should be used for our application. As a programmer, we need to tell what kind of security should be used for the application. So that's where we will create the bean. We will write the logic for that bean. We will customize the object creation and we will write @bean annotation. What is the purpose of writing @bean annotation? What is the purpose of writing @bean annotation? Whenever you write annotation for the method, that method will be called by IOC container. You no need to call that method. IOC container will call that method. Perfect. What is @configuration annotation? Instead of writing all the beans in the start class, we can write in the separate Java class by using @configuration annotation. Is it mandatory that we need to write the bean method in the configuration class? No. you can write @bean method in any Spring Bean class. So it's recommended to write in the configuration class, but it's not mandatory to write only in the configuration class. Now you see, I'm taking this bean method from here. I'm keeping in the report DAO. Now you check this method is getting executed or not. System.out.println bean method executed. So if we get this SOP on the console, then that means bean method is getting executed. So what is report DAO? It is a normal component class. Go to start class, run this application, run as boot application. So when I run this, can you see here? Bean method is executed or not? So what is the conclusion? Is it mandatory to write the bean method only in the configuration class? No, it is not mandatory to write that method only in the configuration class. So you can write that in the any Spring Bean class, but which is recommended? Writing in the config class, it is recommended. How to represent Java class as a config class? By using @configuration annotation. Perfect. How to represent our Java class as a Spring Bean? How to represent Java class as a Spring Bean? So we are using one annotation called @component annotation. We are writing one annotation called @component. When you write @component, it will represent our Java class as a Spring Bean class. Along with this, we are using one annotation called @scope annotation. What is the meaning of @scope annotation? It is used to represent what is the scope of our Spring Bean. It is used to represent what is scope of our Spring Bean. If you don't configure the scope, the default scope will be singleton. If you want to customize, then you can write @scope annotation. And the next one, we have used @configuration annotation. What is the meaning of @configuration annotation? If you want to represent our Java class as a configuration class, we will go for @configuration. Then after, we used one annotation called @bean. What is the purpose of that? To represent our Java class as a Spring Bean, we are going to use bean. Here, if you use a component, IOC will create the object. But I don't want IOC to create the object for the class. I want to create the object for the class. I want to represent that object as a Spring Bean object. For that, we will go for @bean annotation. Then after, we have used one annotation called @component scan. What is the meaning of @component scan? To perform component scanning in our application. So by default, component scanning will happen. But if you want to configure more than one base package, then you need to specify the component scan with the multiple packages. So yesterday, one online student asked you a question. So in our project, already in.ashokit is a base package. And we have created com.tcs as another package. Com.tcs not following base package naming convention, then I want to configure that also as a base package. So for that, I specified component scan base packages is equal to our package and TCS package I specified. His question was, already this package is a base package, why to configure once again? Only you can configure com.tcs now. Why are you configuring this package also as a base package? Already start class is part of this base package. Why you need to configure that again? So if I don't write this annotation, then only this considered as a base package. If I write this annotation, if I remove this here, application will consider only com.tcs as a base package because we are overriding default functionality of the Spring Boot. So if you want to configure com.tcs as a base package, we are writing this annotation. But the problem, only this package will be base package. IOC will not consider our package. So when you are customizing the component scan packages, you need to specify all the packages. Then only these two packages will be scanned as part of component scanning. Okay, good. Now we are calling run method. What is the return type of the run method? What is the return type of the run method? We have seen that run method is a predefined method in the Spring application class. Inside that run method, lot of logic is available. Inside the run method, lot of logic is available. Can you tell me what is happening in the run method? What is happening in the run method? When the application is started, creating the bootstrap context, starting the listeners, preparing the environment, printing the banner, creating IOC container. How IOC will be created? Which class will be used to create the IOC container? Depends upon the form.xml. If you add boot starter, there is a class. If you add web starter, there is a separate class. If you add reactive starter, web flux, there is a separate starter. After IOC container created, it is going to call the runners. Can you tell me what are the runners in the Spring Boot? What are the runners in the Spring Boot, guys? Come on, what are the runners in the Spring Boot? Runners are used to execute any logic only one time when the application started. Runners are used to execute any logic only one time when the application got started. And finally, it is going to return context object. Perfect. Now, this run method is returning configurable application context. Store that into a variable. Right. So I'm taking the return type of the run method. The run method is returning the configurable application context object. By using this context, we can understand how many bean objects are created by IOC container. How to get the count, guys? Context dot get bean definition count. So that means how many beans are available in our application you can get by using this method. System dot out dot println count. So total number of beans available in the application we can get by using this method. Run as boot application. So you can see total there are 54 classes, 54 beans available in our application. Now I want to get the bean object. So there are so many bean objects are available. Report DAO available, user DAO is available. I want to get my bean object from the IOC container. So can you tell me how to get our bean object from the IOC container? Context dot get bean. Context dot get bean, bean type. What is that bean? Report DAO dot class. So I'm getting bean 1. Similarly, I'm getting once again context dot get bean of report DAO dot class. So I'm getting the same bean 2 times. So 2 objects will be created or one object will be created. System dot out dot println bean 1 dot hash code and system dot out dot println bean 2 dot hash code. For same class, I'm getting 2 beans, right? Context dot get bean of report DAO dot class, context dot get bean of report DAO class. I'm storing in the bean 1, I'm storing in the bean 2, I'm printing the hash code of 2 beans. Right click, run as boot application. Can you see? 2 hash codes are same or 2 hash codes are different? 2 hash codes are same. Why 2 hash codes are same? Why? By default, every Spring Bean scope is a singleton scope. This bean does not have any scope here, so it considered by default this one as a singleton. What is the meaning of singleton? Only one object will be created. If you call getBean method for 100 times also, you will get the same object. Second object will not be created. Okay. Suppose if I want every time a new object, we are going to specify scope is equal to prototype. How many scopes available in the Spring? How many scopes available? 4 scopes available. What are those 4 scopes? Singleton, prototype, request, session. Singleton is the default scope. Only one object will be created. Prototype means every time new object will be created. Request session scopes will be used in the web MVC. Now I'm giving the scope as a prototype. Run this application, run as boot application. Now you can see that every time new object is created. As I am calling getBean for 2 times, 2 objects got created. 2 times constructor is executed, 2 objects are having 2 different hash codes. Clear? Good. Now, I want to perform auto wiring by using annotation. So earlier we discussed about auto wiring. What is auto wiring? What is the modes of auto wiring? We discussed in the last session. In the Spring framework, we discussed about what is auto wiring, why we need to go for auto wiring. So what is the meaning of auto wiring? What is the meaning of auto wiring? Identify the dependent object and inject that dependent object into target object. So basically, auto wiring is used to perform dependency injection. So tell me, what is dependency injection? The process of injecting one class object into another class object is called dependency injection. We can do that manually by using ref attribute. We can do that by using auto wiring also. Ref attribute means programmer will tell what is the dependent object and what is the target object. Based on our information, IOC will perform dependency injection, but it's not mandatory. IOC can identify what is the dependent, what is the target based on the modes of the auto wiring. What are the modes available for the auto wiring? We have by name, by type, constructor, no. So there are 4 modes available for the auto wiring. What is the meaning of a by name? Based on the name of the variable, it will identify the dependent bin. What is the by type? Based on the type of the variable, identify the dependent. What is the constructor? Same, but it will perform dependency injection through constructor. Now, I want to perform that auto wiring by using annotations. Earlier, we performed auto wiring by using XML. Now, I want to perform auto wiring by using annotation. So, I want to develop one simple application now. Okay, I want to develop one simple application. This application will contain one user DAO. This application will contain one user DAO interface. For that user DAO interface, there will be a class called user DAO IMPL class will be available. We are following strategy design pattern. One interface, it will have a implementation. So now this interface having a one implementation class. DAO is a interface. Inside the DAO, we will write one method, some dummy method, and it is having a IMPL method. And I want to call this DAO method by using user service. I want to call this by using user service. My user service is dependent on the user DAO. My user service is dependent on the user DAO. So DAO is an interface. DAO IMPL is a implementation class. User service is also one class. One class. Service class should call the DAO method. Now, which is a target, which is a dependent? Service method should call the DAO method. So DAO is a dependent, service is a target. Now, this service bin I want to create by using IOC container. So to represent this as a Spring Bean, what I need to perform? I need to write @ component. Now, here similarly, I want to create the object for DAO IMPL. DAO IMPL also should be represented as a Spring Bean. For that, we are using @ component. And here, this DAO IMPL object should be injected into my user service, right? So am I going to inject the class directly like this, or I will use interface as a mediator? We will use interface as a mediator. Why we need to use interface as a mediator? For loosely coupling. If you inject the class, then the class will become tightly coupled. If you inject the class, class will become tightly coupled. I want to make my class loosely coupled. That's why my class will talk to other class by using interface as a mediator. So tightly coupling, loosely coupling. If one class is directly talking to another class, that is a tightly coupling. Functionality will be affected if any changes happened in the dependent class. So that's why always we need to develop our classes by using interfaces so that we can achieve loosely coupling. Now, I want to develop this application by using Spring Boot with the auto wiring. I want to inject DAO object into service object. Able to follow this? Now, so create one new Spring Boot application. So how many ways are there to create the Spring Boot application? There are two ways available. One is by using initializer website. Second one by using IDE. If you create by using IDE also, internally it will communicate with the initializer website. Internet connection is mandatory. Good. File, new Spring Starter project. Okay. So I'm going for 03 Spring Boot auto wiring application. Spring Boot auto wiring application. Next, latest version. Guys, every 1 week new version coming in the Spring Boot. Current version 3.2.0. Now I don't want any dependency. By default, boot starter will come as a start dependency. I don't need to add any web starter. I don't need to add any security starter because I want to create one standalone application by using Spring Boot. Click on next, click on finish. I'm creating a new boot application. You check its pom.xml, what dependencies it added by default. As it is a new version, downloading the Maven dependencies. Right. Project got created. Go to pom.xml. You check the dependencies. Boot version 3.2.0. What is the starter coming now? What is the starter coming now? By default, boot starter. By using this boot starter, we can develop standalone application. Perfect. Now, first let me create my interface, which is user DAO. So create a interface. I will use a separate package, new class, interface. New interface in.ashokid.dao. I will use it as user DAO. Inside this interface, I'm writing one method, public string find name by ID. So I'm taking integer ID as a parameter and it will return some dummy name. I'm not communicating with any database, guys. Just I will write if else condition. If name is 100, Raju. If name is 200, Rani. Something like that, I will return some dummy name. Our focus today not to communicate with the database. Our focus is to understand what is auto wiring, how to perform that auto wiring by using annotations in the Spring Boot. So I'm taking one DAO interface. Inside the DAO interface, I'm writing one abstract method. Method taking integer as a parameter, returning string as a return type. Now, let us create IMPL class for the interface. Now, so user DAO IMPL. Implement that interface user DAO. Click on finish. Now, so here I will write some dummy logic. If ID equals to 100, then I will return name as some Raju. Right. Else if ID equal to 200, then I will return some other name. Return something like Rani. Else if IDs are not 100, not 200, then I'm going to return some dummy value, null value. Got it? So if ID is 100, I will return some name. If ID is 200, I will return some name. If ID is not 100 and not 200, I will return null value. In future, we will see how to communicate with the database by using DAO. Okay. Now, currently this is a normal Java class. How to represent this Java class as a Spring Bean? By using @component. By using @component. I will write one constructor to understand whether object is creating for this class or not. I will use this constructor to represent whether object is creating or not. Okay. User DAO IMPL constructor. Just to prove that object is created by IOC container. It is a normal Java class or it is a Spring Bean class? It is a Spring Bean class because we are using @component annotation. Okay. So with this our DAO is ready and our IMPL is also ready. Next go for target class. What is our target class? Service. Let me create user service class directly. I'm keeping a package called service package, I'm going for user service. I'm going for user service. I want to represent this also as a Spring Bean. I want to represent this also as a Spring Bean. Come on. How to do that? By using @component. Let us write one constructor to understand. User service just to know whether object is creating by IOC container or not. User service constructor. Okay. Now let me write one method, public void get username. Public void get username. It is taking integer ID as a parameter. How service will get the username? Service should communicate with the DAO. DAO will communicate with the database to get the username. Service should talk to DAO. Service is dependent on the DAO. DAO object should be injected to service by using dependency injection. So here programmer will perform the dependency injection. IOC should perform the dependency injection. IOC should perform the dependency injection. So to perform the dependency injection, I am declaring variable user DAO. User DAO, that is a variable. Now let us call DAO dot find name by ID. Find name by ID. It will give some name. System.out.println. I will print that name on the console. So just to understand whether our service method able to communicate with the DAO method or not. Service is a Spring Bean. DAO also Spring Bean. DAO is having an interface. For that interface, we are having a implementation class. DAO IMPL is one Spring Bean. Service is also one Spring Bean. One Spring Bean object can be injected into another Spring Bean object. But directly we are not doing that. Why we are not doing that directly? Tightly coupling. How to achieve loosely coupling? By using interface. So we are using interface to make our class loosely coupled. Okay. So service is a Spring Bean. DAO IMPL is also a Spring Bean. Now go to start class. Before that, check this. DAO interface having one abstract method. DAO interface available, which is having one abstract method. So for that DAO interface, IMPL class available. Then we have a service class. Service class using the reference of the DAO interface. So it is interface reference variable. Interface reference variable can hold any implementation class object. Then I am writing one method to call the DAO method. So service method is calling the DAO method. Okay. Now go here. If you see package naming convention, this DAO and service will participate in the component scanning, will not participate in the component scanning. Will participate or will not participate? Will participate. Why they will participate? Right. Base package naming convention. My start class is available inside the in.ashokit. This is my base package. in.ashokit.dao, in.ashokit.service. DAO is following base package naming convention. Service also following the base package naming convention. Do I need to define base packages manually? Not required, because they are following the default naming convention. Those packages will participate in the component scanning. Now I need to get the service bean object by using our start class. So by using this start class, I want to get the service bean object, and I want to call service bean method, and I want to see service bean method able to call the DAO method or not. Are you guys able to follow me? So I have a start class. Inside the start class main method will call the run method. Run method will give the IOC container. By using IOC container, I want to get the service object. By using service object, I will call the service method. Service method should call the DAO method. Can we test it? Can you tell me the code for that? Yes, come on, tell me. From the start class, I want to call the service class method. How to do that? First, we need to get the service bean object. How to get the service bean object? Context.getBean. Where is context? Who will give the context for us? IOC. Who will give the IOC for us? Run method. What is the return type of the run method? Configurable application context. So I'm getting the context object by using run method. Once I get the context object, I can get the object from the IOC container. First, let us run Java application. Can you see IOC is creating object for target and dependent? IOC container creating object for target and dependent. Why it is creating the objects? They are Spring Beans and scope is also singleton. They are Spring Beans and scope is singleton. Now, I want to get the service object and I want to call the service method. Tell me the logic. Come on. First, context dot get bean of user service dot class. What is the return type? User service. Once I got the service object, can I call service method? Yes, I will call the service method. I'm calling the service method. So here we will run our application from the start class. Inside the start class, we are calling run method. Run method is giving the IOC container object. Using IOC container object, we are getting the target bean. Using the target bean, we are calling the method. That method will call the DAO method. But dependency injection happens or will not happen? Will not happen. Why? So here DAO variable is available. What is the data type? User DAO. It is a class or interface? Interface. So whenever object created for the service class, what value will be there in the DAO? Null value. Null dot method. This application will give null pointer exception. Run as boot application. Target bean object is created. Dependent bean object created. But we are getting the null pointer exception. Boss, this dot DAO is null. You did not perform auto wiring. You did not inform to IOC container to perform auto wiring. Are you able to follow this? So IOC container loading our Spring Beans. IOC container creating object for the Spring Beans. But IOC container not performing the dependency injection. Are you able to follow this? Good. Now tell me, what is the dependency injection? How many ways we can perform the dependency injection? What is dependency injection? How many ways we can perform dependency injection? The process of injecting one class object into another class object is called dependency injection. Who will perform the dependency injection in the Spring or Spring Boot? IOC container. What is the definition of IOC? IOC is responsible to manage and collaborate dependencies among the objects. IOC will take care of dependency injection. But we need to tell to IOC what is our target, what is our dependent. If you don't want to tell, you enable auto wiring. If you enable auto wiring, IOC itself will identify what is the dependent and what is the target. Here, I did not tell the IOC to perform auto wiring. That's why dependency injection not happened. As the dependency injection not happened, DAO variable is holding null value. Null dot method, it is getting null pointer exception. How many ways are there to perform dependency injection in the Spring? 3 ways. How many ways are there to perform dependency injection? 3 ways available. What are the 3 ways to perform the dependency injection? Setter injection, constructor injection, field injection. What is the meaning of setter injection? Guys, observe. Now, I no need to explain what is a setter, what is constructor. These are fundamentals we learnt in the Spring framework. Without having the knowledge on the Spring, understanding the Spring Boot is very difficult. In the Spring Boot, everything is automated. Everything will be taken care by Spring Boot. but you need to know what is happening internally. So that's why the basic fundamental concepts we learnt in the Spring, same concepts we are using in the Spring Boot also. So I have given you a definition for the Spring Boot. What is that? What is Spring Boot? What is a Spring Boot, guys? Spring Boot is one approach to develop Spring application with less configuration. Whatever you can develop by using Spring, same thing only we will develop by using Spring Boot also. There is nothing different. There is nothing new. Sir, in the Spring we can develop standalone application. You can develop web application. You can develop distributed application by using Spring framework. When it comes to the Spring Boot, same story. You can develop standalone application. You can develop web application. You can develop distributed. Sir, when the Spring is already available, then why Spring Boot came into picture? In the Spring, you need to write everything on your own. You need to configure lot of things in the Spring to make your application ready. But when it comes to the Spring Boot, auto configuration is available. That is the main advantage with the Spring Boot, auto configuration. What is the meaning of auto configuration? What is the meaning of auto configuration? It will identify what configuration required for the application and it will provide that configuration for the application. Programmer should focus only on the business logic. Common logic will be taken care by Spring Boot. What are the advantages with the Spring Boot? What are the advantages with the Spring Boot? Form starter, dependency version conflict, auto configuration, embedded server, actuator. What is embedded server? When you run the web application, by default, it will deploy in the server. You no need to set up the server also. Boot will take care of the server. What is actuator? Management. You can monitor your application with the production ready features. So how many classes are loaded? How many objects are created? How many threads are running? What is the health of the application? Everything you can get by using actuator. What is a form starter? It is simplified our Maven configuration. If you want to develop a web application, one dependency is sufficient. It will download all the required jar files to develop our application. What is a dependency version conflict? You no need to specify version number for the dependencies. Boot will take care of that. With the Spring Boot, we can achieve rapid application development. What is the meaning of rapid application development? You can develop applications quickly without bothering about the configuration. That is called auto configuration. Are you clear? Boot is easy or difficult? Easy. Good. Now here, I have created my application. DAO interface is available. For that one, IMPL class also available. Always recommended to create interface, then provide the implementation, so that one class can communicate with the another class using interface as a mediator. One class will communicate with the another class by using interface as a mediator. To achieve loosely coupling, we will follow this approach. Who told you to follow this approach? Spring is telling, Spring Boot is telling? No. Who is telling this concept? Strategy design pattern. So we need to develop our classes by using strategy design pattern so that our classes will be loosely coupled. Okay. Now I have one dependent class. I have one target class. Now dependent object should be injected into target. That work I will not do that. I will tell to IOC to do that work. That is called dependency injection. Manually dependency injection we can do. With the auto wiring also we can do dependency injection. Dependency injection we can implement in 3 ways, guys. One is setter injection. Another one is constructor injection. Third one is field injection. Setter, constructor and field injection. Are you clear? What is a setter injection? Come on, what is setter injection? There is nothing new. There is nothing new. Everything already we discussed. We are just revising and we are doing in the Spring Boot. I told you, whatever we learnt in the Spring, everything will come in the Spring Boot also. Now, what is a setter injection? The process of injecting dependent object into target object by using target class setter method. So now, if you want to perform setter injection, then we need to write one setter method for our variable. Right click, source, generate getters and setters, only setter. Select only setter, click on generate. So with this, setter method is generated. So why we need this setter method? To initialize this variable, that is called dependency injection, setter injection. The process of injecting dependent object into target object using target class setter method is called setter injection. Now, I have written one setter method. Run the application and check it. Is this a setter method calling or not? Check it. Is this user service set DAO method? Just to understand whether this setter method is getting called or not. Go to start class, run this application, null pointer exception. That means dependency injection happening? No. Setter method called or setter method not called? Not called. Earlier, when you go for the Spring, we will write a XML. Inside the XML, we will write the property tag to call the setter method. Earlier, we have given property tag. With the property tag, it will call the setter method. But do I have XML now? I don't have any XML. Everything is based on the annotation. So now I need to tell to IOC container, hey IOC, my service class is dependent on the DAO class. My service class is dependent on the DAO class. You inject, observe carefully. My service class is dependent on the DAO class. You inject DAO object into service object using a setter method. I have a setter method. I need to tell to IOC to call that setter method. To tell to IOC to call the setter method, I will write auto-wired here. That's it. That is called auto-wiring with the setter injection. When I write auto-wired annotation at the setter method, IOC will understand that it should call this a setter method to perform the dependency injection. So if you want to perform auto-wiring with the setter method, you need to write that annotation at the setter method level. Now observe. Right click on this, start class, run as boot application. Now can you see? Am I able to get the name Raju from the DAO? Yes. So here observe. What is this? What is this? Set DAO method called. Why this set DAO method called now? Because we are telling auto wiring. So I'm telling auto wiring. So when I tell this as auto wiring, it is going to call that setter method. If I remove the auto wiring, setter method will call, or setter method will not be called. Setter method will not be called. So if you want to perform auto wiring with the setter method, you need to write that annotation at the setter method level. So whenever IOC container create the object for the target class, it will check, is there any auto-wide method available? If there is any auto-wide method, IOC container will call this method. What is the parameter for this method? Come on guys, what is the parameter for this method? User DAO. User DAO is a class or user DAO is an interface? User DAO is a interface. Then how to pass the object for the setter method? Observe. I am writing auto wiring annotation at the setter method level. So that means I am giving a instruction to IOC container to call the setter method. That setter method is expecting one parameter. What parameter it is expecting? What parameter it is expecting? User DAO. What is user DAO here? Interface. So can we have object for the interface? Can we have object for the interface? Can IOC create the object for the interface? No. So DAO does not have a object. Then how it will pass the object as a parameter? If that object not available, check for the implementation class object. So do we have implementation class? Yes, DAO IMPL implementation class object available. It will call the setter method by passing DAO IMPL class object as a parameter. Are you getting my point? So here, this auto wiring will check with the by name. First it will check with this variable name, is there any bean available? Okay, no. Then what it will check? Type. What is the data type now? User DAO. Further DAO, any implementation class? Yes, one implementation class. Then it will inject this DAO IMPL into user service by calling the setter method. This is called setter injection with the auto wiring. So why I am writing auto wide annotation? To tell IOC to call the setter method. That setter method expecting a parameter. Parameter is a interface. Interface will not have the object. Then it will check for the IMPL object. IMPL object is available. That IMPL object will be passed as a parameter for the setter method. Inside the setter method, I am initializing the variable. That is called dependency injection. Who is performing the dependency injection? Programmer or IOC? IOC. How IOC will know that it should perform the dependency injection? Auto wiring. Where I am writing the auto wiring? At the setter method level. Are you guys clear? So it will use by type now. Interface is available. Interface IMPL will be identified. IMPL object will be injected to target by using setter injection. Are you able to follow this? Anybody not able to understand? What is auto wiring with a setter injection? Online students? Online students, are you able to understand how auto wiring is working with the setter method? How auto wiring is working with the setter method? If I remove this auto wired annotation here, injection will not happen. Okay. So I'm writing this annotation at the setter method level. Setter injection will happen. Are you clear? Run this application. Run as boot application. Run as boot application. See this. DAO IMPL object is created. Service object also created. Setter method also called. That means dependency injection happened. Then my service method calling the DAO method. DAO returning the name based on the ID. That name I am printing on the console. Now, I don't want to go for setter. I want to go for constructor. I don't want to go for setter. I want to go for constructor. Tell me, what is a constructor injection? What is a constructor injection? Come on, guys. The process of injecting dependent object into target object using target class constructor is called constructor injection. Can we perform dependency injection with the zero param constructor? Is it possible to perform dependency injection with the zero param constructor? No. What constructor is required? Parameterized constructor is required. Are you clear? Good. Let me write one parameterized constructor. Okay. What is the parameter? DAO. This dot DAO is equal to DAO. This is zero param constructor. Just to show you which constructor it is using to create the object. So this is arg constructor. Zero param constructor is available. Arg constructor is available. Do I need the setter method now? No, remove it. Okay. I want to go for constructor injection. How many constructors are available? How many constructors are available? How many constructors are available? Two constructors are available. One is zero param constructor. Second one is parameterized constructor. IOC by default will use which constructor? Here I have DAO object, guys. Service object, service class available. DAO class available. For DAO, only zero param constructor. Directly it will use that constructor to create the object. Coming to service, how many constructors are available? There are two constructors available. One is a zero param constructor, another one is a parameterized constructor. When you represent your class as a spring bean, when you represent your class as a spring bean, by default, IOC container will use zero param constructor to create the object. If your class is a spring bean, by default, IOC container will use zero param constructor to create the object. See that. Go here, run the start class, run as boot application. Now, see here. Which constructor it is using? Zero param constructor it is using to create the object. If zero param constructor is called to create the object, dependency injection will happen or dependency injection will not happen. Dependency injection will not happen. If the dependency injection not happen, DAO holding null value, then null dot method null pointer exception. Now, I need to inform IOC, boss, don't go for zero param constructor. You use a parameterized constructor to create the object. For that, we will write auto void annotation at the constructor level. If I write auto wire at the setter method, it is going to perform setter injection. If I write auto void annotation at the constructor level, it will perform constructor injection. Are you clear? Now, when I write two constructors, zero param and parameterized, can I call it as a constructor overloading? Can I call it as a constructor overloading? Yes, this is called as a constructor overloading. Auto wiring I am writing at the parameterized constructor level, then IOC container will use this constructor to create the object for the service class. When it is using this constructor to create the object, constructor expecting a parameter. What is that parameter? DAO. What is the DAO in our project? Interface. No object. Then what it has to do? Identify the IMPL. IMPL is a spring bean. For that IMPL, object is already created. So it will pass IMPL object as a parameter to create the object for the target class. So if it has to create the target class constructor should be executed. There are two constructors. Which constructor it should call now? Parameter constructor. Why? I am writing auto wiring. To call that constructor, parameter should be passed. DAO IMPL object will be passed as a parameter and will call the constructor. What I am doing in the constructor? Initializing the variable. Dependency injection. Dependency injection will happen through constructor when you write auto void annotation at the constructor level. You can write that auto void annotation at the setter method level. You can write at the constructor level also. Are you clear with this one? Now run this application and check it. Run as boot application. Which constructor it is calling for the service now? Why it is not calling zero param constructor? Why it is not calling zero param constructor? Because of auto wiring. So are we able to perform auto wiring with the constructor injection? Yes. How to perform auto wiring with the setter injection? How to perform auto wiring with the setter injection? By using auto void annotation at the setter method level. How to perform auto wiring by using constructor injection? By using auto void annotation at the constructor level. Are you clear? Now observe, I will make one change in the class. I will make one change in the class. So here I am removing this annotation. Then what will happen? If I remove that annotation, what will happen now? Zero param constructor will be called to create the object. Zero param constructor will be called to create the object. Okay. So if it is calling zero param constructor, dependency injection will happen or will not happen? Will not happen. Okay. Now I will remove this also. Now, how many constructors are available? One constructor is available. That too, it is a parameterized constructor. Now, Java, basic Java concept. If you don't write any constructor, compiler will add one default constructor. If I write my own constructor, compiler will not add the constructor. Now, in my target class, how many constructors available? How many constructors available in my target class? There is only one constructor available in my target class. Now, this target class is a Spring Bean or it is not a Spring Bean? It is a Spring Bean. Now, if it is a Spring Bean, IOC container should create the object. Now, to create the object, it should call the constructor. Which constructor is available? Parameter constructor is available. What is the parameter? DAO object. For that IMPL available, it will pass. Now, I am not writing auto void annotation. Okay. Dependency injection will happen or will not happen? Will not happen. What is the output? What is the output? Null pointer exception. See that? See that? Why we are not getting null pointer exception even though I am not writing the auto void annotation? The reason is here IOC container don't have option to create the object using zero param constructor. My class is having only one constructor. Even though I am not writing auto void annotation, my class is a Spring Bean. IOC has to create the object for the class. To create the object for the class, it has to call parameterized constructor only. So when your class is having only parameterized constructor, writing auto void annotation is optional. Even if I don't write that, it has to call that constructor. Suppose if I have two constructors, then IOC will pick up which constructor? Zero param constructor. So if there are two constructors, zero param and parameterized, IOC will choose zero param constructor. Then dependency injection will not happen. But what I am doing here, I am removing this annotation and I am removing my zero param constructor also. Then simple examples are, in this room, that window is open, door is open. If you want to go out, which option you will choose first? Door. If I lock that door, if you want to go out, what is the option you have? You have to jump from here. Same thing. If you have zero param constructor, parameters constructor, IOC will always choose easiest approach. What is the easiest approach? Zero param constructor to create the object for the class. But here I'm removing that zero param constructor. Then IOC should call only parameter constructor. Whether you write auto wire or whether you don't write auto wire, IOC should call that constructor expecting DAO object. Already DAO IMPL object available. IOC will pass that object as a parameter, will call that constructor. Inside that constructor, what I am doing? Injection. I'm initializing that variable. So if you don't write the auto void annotation, when there is only one parameter as a constructor, still dependency injection will happen. Are you clear? So here, now, if I write it, any problem? Still dependency injection will happen. If I don't write it also, still dependency injection will happen. Are you clear? So, but most of the people, they will write auto void annotation at the constructor also when there is only one constructor. Actually not required. Why it is not required? You understand the reason why it is not required? Because IOC don't have any option to create the object for class. It has to create that object by using parameter constructor. That constructor expecting object as a parameter, it will pass that object as a parameter and it will create the object for the service class. Like this also you can perform constructor injection. So setter injection and constructor injection. If you write auto void annotation at the setter method level, then setter injection will happen. If you write auto void annotation at the constructor, then constructor injection will happen. Now I'm writing both the constructor, I'm writing a setter, I'm writing auto wiring for the constructor, I'm writing auto wiring for the setter also. What will happen? Which dependency injection will happen now? First constructor injection will happen, then setter injection will happen. setter injection will override constructor injection. Setter injection will override constructor injection. Are you clear? Good. See the order. See the order. Right click, run as boot application. So which one is executing first? Constructor. Then setter. Which will be the final injection? Which will be the final injection? The final injection will be setter injection. That means if you perform setter plus constructor for the same variable, then first constructor will happen, then setter will happen. Setter will override the constructor injection. Are you clear? Very good. Any confusion with the auto wiring using constructor, using setter? So with this, what is the conclusion? Auto wiring annotation, you can write at the method level, you can write at the constructor level also. Constructor injection means inject the dependent object into target object using target class constructor. So setter injection means inject dependent object into target object using target class setter method. If you perform both, first constructor injection will happen, then setter injection will happen. Setter injection will override constructor injection. Are you clear? What is the third type of injection? That is the most easiest injection. Remove the setter method, remove the constructor, nothing is required. Okay, I have a variable. For this variable, I will write auto wiring. That's it. So I'm writing the auto void annotation at the variable level. If you write auto void annotation at the variable level, IOC will perform field injection. IOC will perform field injection. This is most easiest approach, but it is not recommended. This is most easy. Most of the people will go for the field injection in the project, but field injection is not recommended. Why? Because when you go for the field injection, IOC container will violate OOPS principle. Here, actually, what is the type of the variable? Can we access private variables outside? As per OOPS, we cannot access private variables outside. But by using reflection, we can use a private variable. We have seen in the advanced Java how to access private variable outside of the class also. By using reflection API, we can access private variable outside of the class. So whenever you go for field injection, IOC container will use reflection API to initialize this private variable from outside. So what is the meaning of initialization? In this variable, it has to store some dependent object. In this variable, it has to store the value. This is a private variable, should be accessed within the class, but IOC is a separate class. So the service is one class, IOC is some other class. From outside, IOC container will access private variable by using reflection API. It will violate OOPS principle. That's why field injection not recommended, but it is easy to use. If you write @auto void at the variable level, then field injection will happen. So is it going to call the setter method? Is it going to call the setter method? Do we have setter method in the class? Is it going to call the constructor? No. Then how it will perform the dependency injection? Using reflection API. So it will directly initialize the value to the variable from outside by using reflection API. Now check this. Start class, run as boot application. Dependency injection happened or not? Happened. Is it happening with the setter method? Is it happening with the constructor? No. Then how this dependency injection happening? It will perform field injection. How it will perform the field injection? Reflection. By using reflection API, we can access private variables outside of the class also. IOC container will use that reflection API to access our DAO variable. Inside the DAO variable, it will store the IMPL object. That is called dependency injection with the field by using auto wiring. So now At how many places you can use auto-wired annotation? Setter method level, constructor level, field level. What is a field injection? Come on. What is a field injection in the Spring Boot? Come on. The process of injecting dependent object into target object using target class variable with the help of reflection API. So it is a private variable. As per Java, private variables we cannot access outside. If we can't access private variable outside, how IOC is storing the value to the private variable from outside? It is violating the OOPS principle. It is using reflection API to access private variable outside. Are you clear? So auto wiring we can perform in 3 ways: by using setter injection, by using constructor injection, by using field injection. If you write auto wired at the setter method level, that is setter injection. If you write auto wired at the constructor level, that is constructor injection. If you write auto wired at the field level, that is field injection. Are you clear? Good. Any questions, anyone? Anybody having any questions? Huh? We'll discuss that. Annotation, that means it is a predefined program which contains some logic. Any questions, anyone from today's session? Today, what we understood? Auto wiring by using annotations. How many places you can do the auto wiring? 3. Setter, constructor, and field. Okay, fine. When the auto wired annotation is optional, when you have only one parameterized constructor, auto-wired annotation is optional. Okay, because when there is only one parameterized constructor, IOC should call the same constructor to create the object. There is no option for the IOC. Then it is optional. If you have multiple constructors, then you need to specify which constructor IOC should use to create the object for the class. Fine. Yes, good question. The next one. In the auto wiring, there is a chance of getting the ambiguity problem. Yes or no? There is a chance of getting the ambiguity problem in the auto wiring. When you will get the ambiguity problem in the auto wiring? When you will get ambiguity problem in the auto wiring? Come on, guys. When more than one implementation class is available, then there is a chance of getting the ambiguity problem. Can we create that ambiguity problem now? Yes? Okay. Inside the DAO, user DAO IMPL available, right? Let me go for user DAO IMPL. This is Oracle user DAO IMPL. I changed this class name to Oracle user DAO IMPL, implementing the user DAO interface. Then similarly, I will go for MySQL user DAO IMPL. One is to communicate with the Oracle database. Another one is to communicate with the MySQL database. MySQL user DAO IMPL. Now, how many implementations available for our interface? User DAO IMPL is available now. Let me take this out. Right. Oracle DAO implementing the interface. MySQL DAO also implementing the interface. One interface can have any number of implementations. Here my interface is having 2 implementations. Now observe. MySQL DAO is also a Spring Bean. Oracle DAO is also a Spring Bean. What type of dependency injection I am expecting? What type of dependency injection we are performing? Field injection. How it will identify the dependent object? Based on the name first. Based on the name first. By name. What is by name? What is by name? Which if the variable name is matching with the name of the bean, it will go for by name. but my bean names are matching with the variable name. My bean name matching with the variable name. No. Then it will go for, come on, see here. Oracle DAO available. By default, class name will become the bean name. By default, class name will become the bean name. What is this bean name? Oracle user DAO IMPL. What is this bean name? MySQL user DAO IMPL. What is the variable name? Matching. Will it perform the by name? Name is not matching for the dependent. If the name is not matching, what it will do? By type. But with the by type is an interface. For the interface, how many implementations available? 2 implementation. Which one it has to consider? Ambiguity. Okay, ambiguity. Go to the start class, run as boot application. Now we got the problem. What is this? Required a single bean, but 2 were found. But here, when I specify the auto-wired annotation at this variable, it will try to perform auto-wiring with by name. It will check any bean available with this variable name. Is there any bean available with the variable name? Not available. Then what it will do? By type. It will do by type. Are you able to understand? Good. Now, let me give the bean name. Here I am giving the bean name as Oracle. Bean name as Oracle. For this one, I will give the bean name as MySQL. That's it. Now, earlier in the XML, we will configure bean ID. Now, what is the bean ID? MySQL for the MySQL IMPL. What is the bean ID for the Oracle IMPL? Oracle. Now, I will tell to IOC to perform dependency injection with the auto wiring by using by name. So what is the default meaning of by name? What is the default meaning of by name? To identify the dependent bean based on the variable name. If my variable name is matching with any bean name, it will identify that as a dependent object. Clear? But name is not matching or not matching. One bean having the name as a MySQL, another bean having the name as a Oracle, but the variable name is a DAO. Names are not matching. When the names are not matching, what will happen? Failed. Names are not matching, it is failed. I will tell to IOC to identify the bean based on the name by using qualifier. What is the annotation I am using, guys? @qualifier. So @qualifier I am using to tell which bean it has to identify, which bean name it should consider for the auto wiring. So one bean name is Oracle, one bean name is MySQL, but those names are not matching with my variable name. But I want to inject Oracle DAO into target class. For that, what annotation I will use? @qualifier. Clear? Good. Run this application now. Run as boot application. What happened? Which DAO is injected? Oracle DAO object will be injected. Why the Oracle DAO object will be injected? Qualifier with the Oracle. If you want, you can see that. System.out.println dependent. Which dependent is injected? DAO.getClass.getName. What is the dependent object injected? So there are 2 implementations available. Both implementations are having the different names. The bean names are matching with my variable name, or bean name is not matching with my variable name, not matching. But I want to identify the dependent based on the name of the bean. How to specify the name of the bean? Qualifier. It is used to resolve ambiguity problem. So by using qualifier, you can perform the dependency injection with the auto wiring by name mode. Now the dependent is identified based on the name. With which name it will identify the dependent? Oracle. Because I am giving the qualifier as Oracle. Run this. What is the dependent injected? What is the dependent is injected? Oracle is injected. Now suppose if I want to MySQL, qualifier I will give as a MySQL. Now run this. Run as boot application. It will inject MySQL class. Suppose I don't want to go for name. I don't want to go for name. I want to go for type. What is by type? Based on the variable type, it will identify the dependent object. So the type is interface. For this interface, how many implementations available? 2 implementations available for the interface. Which implementation it should consider now? Which implementation it should consider now? Ambiguity or not? Come on guys, by type, ambiguity. See this. What it is saying? Boss, I'm expecting 1 bean, but there are 2. Now I need to resolve the ambiguity. To resolve the ambiguity, either you can go for a qualifier. What is the meaning of qualifier? To specify name of the bean to inject. If you don't want to go for the qualifier, you can specify @primary. You can earlier we used primary is equal to true in the XML, but in the annotation, primary annotation is available. When I go for @primary, what is the meaning of that? What is the meaning of @primary? This is the auto wiring candidate. This bean will be considered for the auto wiring. If you have the names, you can go for qualifier to identify the dependent. If you don't want to go with the name, you need to go for @primary annotation. I'm using @primary for the Oracle. Run this, run as boot application. Now you see which one is injected? Oracle. So can we resolve ambiguity problem by using annotation? So to resolve ambiguity problem with the annotations, how many options we have? 2 options. One is a qualifier option, another one is primary option. When to go for qualifier option? Name. If you want to identify with the name. When to go for primary? Type. When you have a type option, then you can go for primary. If I configure primary for 2 beans, again ambiguity. Only 1 bean should be primary. So that bean will be identified as a dependent. Are you clear? Auto wiring with annotation. What is auto wiring? Identifying the dependent and inject into target using by name or by type or through constructor. By name means based on the name of the variable, it will identify the dependent. If the variable name is not matching with the bean name, you can use a qualifier to identify the dependent with the bean name. If you want to identify the dependent with the by type, so based on the data type, it will identify. If there is an ambiguity, to resolve the ambiguity, we will use @primary annotation. Clear guys? Good. Any questions? Can you practice this? People are asking, sir, please share the code. I already told you. If you want, I can share it. The problem, you will practice typing. If I share the code, you will practice typing. You need to practice typing or you need to practice Spring Boot. For that, you need to think and you need to develop the application. I'm not developing any rocket science application. If I click a button, rocket is going. No. Basic Java class with the dependency injection. You need to try developing these applications on your own. If you are able to develop, that means you are understanding the concept. If you are not able to develop, that means you are not listening to the class properly. So what is there to give the code? In the online, some people are sending, sir, please share the code. Kya fayda bhai? Why you joined for the course? To learn the subject and to develop the application. Everything I am developing in front of you. I am not executing previous batch example. Line by line code I am writing in front of you. I am telling why I am writing that. And I am showing you how to execute that. After listening for 1.5 hours, one simple program, if you are not able to develop the same program on your own, there is no use of joining this course. There is no use of joining this course. I explained everything in the class and I'm telling you what problems we are getting. And I'm telling you how to solve the problem, how to develop the application. After discussing this much, if you are not able to develop this application on your own, what is the use of paying 10,000, 8,000 for this course? Why you need to sit 1.5 hours in the class per day? There is no use. There is no use. So think. Before asking me, please share the code. Think once. Why you joined for this course? What you need to do with this course? Sharing the code, just 5 minutes task for me. I will upload in the GitHub. I will give the link. Everybody will download. Everybody will copy paste. course will complete, you will not get anything. So if you try to do this practice 1 week, you will fail. 10 days, you will fail. After 15 days, you can develop the projects on your own. You need to improve that confidence, guys. You should try to develop these applications on your own. That is the reason we are spending 3 to 4 months of time to complete the syllabus. If you want, generally, if a faculty share the code with the students, students will become lazy. They will not improve their coding skill. They will not improve their programming skill. 1.5 hour class you attended. Sit for 3 hours. Do the practice. If it fail, no problem. Come to me. 10 days failing, no issue. After 1 month, what will happen? You will become master in the Spring Boot. You can develop the projects on your own. You need to improve that skill, guys. So think on that. Still, if you want, send me a message in the group. I will share the code. I don't have any problem. Good. Anyone having any questions? Offline? Yeah. Now, you guys have a Maven online workshop. You can attend from here also. Maven workshop link already we have shared in the group. So please attend that Maven workshop. That is very, very important because we are developing the projects by using Maven. So please attend that online workshop from your mobile or from your laptop. It starts at 9 o'clock. So already time up. Thank you, guys. We'll see you Monday. Online students, any questions, anyone? You can unmute and you can ask me.
Hello, sir.
Yeah,
Hi, sir.
Hello, sir.
Which of the dependency injection they use in the project, sir, in real time?
That I will explain, sir. When to go for constructor, when to go for setter, I will explain that in the coming class. Okay, just we are understanding the concept now. When to use which one, we will discuss that.
By name, always it is not matching, sir. By type only we are doing
yes,
right,
sir.
Sir.
Yes.
It will never match, sir, in real time also.
You can, if you want to match it, you can keep the name same, but generally, mostly it will happen with the by type in the real time.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else, any question? Online students, sir, anyone having any questions?
Sir, added auto wiring we can use in class now?
No, class. Sir. At the class level, you can't use it, sir. We can use it only at the method level, constructor level, and field level. You can't use it at the class level.
Okay, sir.
Sir, how to inject many dependency classes into target class?
Yes, one sir, target we will work on that, sir. We will work on in the next example. One target with multiple dependents I will take in the next example. Got it? Yeah.
Yes,
I'm
sir.
uploading the notes in the portal, guys. So please do the practice before coming to Monday's session. We have next class on Monday. Any other doubts, anyone?
Sir, this application in properties file, each time whenever I change the code, I need to change the server.port 8081.
You need to stop the server properly, sir. Otherwise, you need to stop and start it again. Whenever you want to rerun the application, you need to stop the server. If you don't want to do that, there is a dependency called a DevTools dependency that you can add in the pom.xml. So that server will be restarted. You no need to stop and start it again and again. In the WebMVC, we will understand that concept.
Oh, okay, sir. Thank you.
Yep. Anyone else? Any other questions? Good. Thank you, guys. So I have already uploaded the notes. So please practice before coming to Monday. Thank you. And attend Maven workshop now.